coming at you today with another lesson in the book of Daniel. My name is Autumn Crawford, and this is Married to an Old Man Ministry. We've been really focusing on the book of Daniel lately in my studies. I'm trying to get through the whole thing of it just to give y'all a much better understanding of the book itself, but also so that I can get a much better understanding of it. So it's kind of a win-win scenario for me. I have actually been trying to listen to the whole Bible entirely for the year, and today I made it to chapter 42 of Genesis. So I am currently on day 15 of this reading guide that my preacher actually gave me Sunday at church. So it's pretty awesome. Listening to it just helps out tremendously. And this is just a cool little guide that he gave me so you can like check mark off your days to where you know where you are through the whole year. I know a lot of people look at reading the Bible and it can seem very intimidating to try to just say, oh my goodness, I'm going to read through it all in 1 year. But I'm going to tell you, having that app, being able to put a headphone in at work and just listening to it, or being able to walk around the house with it just playing on my phone continuously, it just helps out tremendously for anyone who has a very busy life, like I do, or you're a parent or something. It just makes it so much easier. Daniel chapter 5, when I did this one at church, I titled the lesson, actually, Hear My Warnings. Hear My Warnings. Warnings from God, because Daniel chapter 5 really has a lot to do with warnings that were given to Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, to him in order to not go down the path, but it was already planned out by God. It was already predestined kind of thing, and it was just one of those when Belshazzar took over, okay, you're the one that would end the kingdom of Babylon under them. So we're going to kind of look at that a little bit today, and just go see as far as we can dive into it, okay? I want to open with a prayer. Lord, please just let every one of these hearers be able to understand your word even better, Lord. Let me be able to speak your words the way you want them taught, Lord. And let each and every single person just learn, grow, and just get a better understanding of your word and be able to have a better understanding with you in this year 2022. And let us all be able to rise this year and come to where we need to be in you, and just be able to have that closeness with you and be able to grow each and every single day, whether it is by watching things like this, reading your word, or just trying to sit in your presence every day. Lord, let us grow, let us be closer to you, and let us hear your warnings. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Okay, so Daniel chapter 5 verse 1 starts out with King Belshazzar made a great feast to 1,000 of his princes and drank wine before the 1,000. And Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded them to bring the golden vessels which his father, actually grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, had brought from the temple in Jerusalem, that king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink thereof. Okay, so this is throwing it back to chapter 1, verse 2, where you see the vessels actually being taken out of the house of God. These are those vessels. These are precious. These were used for ceremonies only. You know, these were not for the common person to just drink out of, first of all. These were something kept in the temple only for those people to drink out of. You know, it would the people who were in the temple to actually use. They were not just for the random person off the street to just come in and use. Like, these things were special, extremely special. So this, of course, would anger anyone seeing these special things being used, especially because they were used in verse 4 to praise their gods of gold, silver, brass, iron, and wood and stone. Okay, so their gods, we know, of course, that their gods were all just idols. They sat there, basically like this bottle of water. To them, could have been an idol, especially if you painted a face on it. That would be an idol to them. Some people have idols that are like that, sit in their house. And they put them in little cabinets, tell you not to touch them because they're their precious trophies or their precious antique plates and things like that. I know my grandmother, she had it. Mama, I love you, but I did not understand what was up with that big china cabinet up there in display for things to be in it that we never got to even touch. Never really understood that. But that's people putting, you know, of course, a little bit more meaning on an object like these people did, putting their gods were an object and they worshiped these objects. And so not only were they pouring wine into these vessels to drink, but they were also pouring wine in these vessels to pour out to their gods, okay? And I'm sure some of you may be thinking, you know, you maybe have done a history lesson or two and said, Belshazzar was never actually king of Babylon itself. Well, he was king of the city, okay? He was king of the Babylon, the actual city, inside the whole Babylonian empire, okay? So he was the ruler of this city. And so that's why you may be looking up in history, you don't actually see the name Belshazzar. But if you actually really start digging, you can find a name of Belshazzar being the son of the last king of the Babylonian Empire, okay? So at the same hours that this happened, a hand appeared. Fingers of a man's hand, and it wrote against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the palm of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance changed. Okay, so there was a hand that appeared, and it wrote on the wall. But it wrote in the plaster of the wall. Okay, now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, okay, at this time period, buildings and houses were built with stone, okay? Most of them, it says plaster. You know, you're probably thinking of like drywall, like in my house hanging up behind me. But it would be a much sturdier structure than that, okay? And so this hand appeared and basically was writing almost as if you stuck your finger into butter and was writing, okay? It was going through these things on the wall like that. And then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him. So the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against the other. His knees smacked, and the joints of his loins were loosed. That means his knees smacked together, and he pooped his pants. You probably just heard my oven ding. I'll probably start getting stuff ready for dinner in just a second. Because, you know, got to be that mom, got to do multitask and do multiple things. So, he literally got so scared by seeing this hand writing on the wall that he pooped his pants. And he cried aloud that they should bring all the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers to him. And said to the wise men of Babel, whosoever can read this writing and declare me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed in purple and shall have a chain of gold about his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Does this not sound familiar? Third ruler in the kingdom? Who was already third ruler in the kingdom? I don't know. Maybe Daniel? Daniel was? But none of them could actually show him the interpretation. So he grew troubled. But then his grandmama came up. Any of y'all have a grandmother that's full of lots of wisdom? Especially when you're acting ignorant, can come up and put you in your place? Well, his grandmother, the queen, came up to him and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom in whom the spirit of the holy gods and in the days of thy father Light and understanding and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made the chief of the enchanters, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, because a more excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, for he did expound dreams and declare hard sentences and dissolved doubts, were found in him, even in Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will declare the interpretation. Okay, so his grandmother comes up to him and says, honey, I know you're in a situation. I know you don't know who to call on. I know you're going to ask all these wise men, as they like to call themselves, but they really are not wise, come and tell you what you need to hear, but you actually need to seek the counsel of Daniel, because he actually knows the truth. He has wisdom, he has knowledge, and he has understanding. Now, I know a lot of y'all out there probably have people in your family that have been telling you, you don't need to listen to this person. You don't need to listen to that person. Instead, you need to seek counsel from this person, because they actually know what they're talking about. See, the Lord tends to put people in our lives like this grandmother who want your best interest, who will lead you down to the path of righteousness. Okay? So this grandmother knew that Daniel could do it. And notice, they kept trying to change his name to Belshazzar, but he proved time and time again that the Lord was in him. And so even though they kept trying to change his name was still Daniel. And people still called him Daniel. People still called him by his Hebrew name. Most everyone else, their names were changed and they never went by their Hebrew names again. So this is just to show how much Daniel stood out amongst the others that were there. And this also shows you that, hey, you know what? If somebody in your life is trying to give you a little bit of advice that you need to maybe follow someone else's, trust in the Lord, probably need to listen to them, because they are more wise than you are. And there's a lot of stuff my grandmother told me when I was little I wish I would have listened to. But the Lord has a plan for us all. Daniel was brought before the king, and the king spoke unto them and says, Art thou Daniel, which art the children of the captivity of Judah, whom my father the king brought out of Jewry. Out of Jewry. That is what it says. Out of Jewry. For they are idolaters, and they wanted them to believe in their gods. But let's be honest, he wasn't brought out of Jewry. He still had the living Almighty still in him. So, now I have heard of thee, and that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom be upon thee. And he tells them that he tried to get the interpretation, but nobody could. But you should be able to give us the interpretation. And he said, I will make you the third ruler of the kingdom, and I will do all this stuff to you. And Daniel answered and said before the king, keep your rewards to yourself. Give them to someone else. I will read the writing, and I will give you the interpretation. O king, hear thou, the Most High God gave unto Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and a majesty and an honor and a glory. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. He put to death whom he would, he smote whom he would set up and whom he would put down. But when his heart was puffed up and his mind hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his honor from him. Remember, when Nebuchadnezzar tried to do what the Lord said not to do in chapter 4, he took his heart out and made him walk in the fields like a cow. He thought he was one for 7 years. But then he restored his kingdom to him and gave him a new heart. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was like them of the beasts of the fields, and his dwelling was with the wild animals. God bare rule over the kingdom of men, and he appointed over it whomsoever he pleased. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart. You have not humbled your heart, and you know that you haven't. But hast lifted thyself up against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and the princes and the wives and the concubines have drunk them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver, gold, of brass, of iron, of wood, of stone, which neither see, neither hear, nor understand, and in God, in whose hand thy breath is, and all thy ways, him hast thou not glorified. You have sinned against God, is what he is telling Belshazzar. He is saying, you have sinned against God. You didn't turn your heart away. You are so full of pride and all puffed up. How many of us have been full of pride? You've been puffed up with your own arrogance. You have seen and have tasted of this world and have lived it for so long, until one day you are finally smacked in the face with reality. And your only person you can turn to is God. Don't let that be your reality. Don't let this Belshazzar reality become your reality. Because the palm that wrote on the wall wrote, Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin. And the interpretation of Mene means God has numbered thy kingdom, and it is finished. Said it twice, Mene twice, meaning it is. It is written twice for the certainty of the thing, showing that God has most surely counted, signifying also that God has appointed a term for all kingdoms. I want to point that out. He has appointed a term for all kingdoms. Doesn't matter how it's set up. It's still a kingdom. Remember that. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balance and are found too light. You have been weighed and you are too light. You are too light, as in you're wanting. You do not have the right heart. You do not have the right intentions. You do not have the right desires. Your heart is full of sin and evilness. You have been found as that, Belshazzar. And Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Okay, a little bit of history lesson to add into here. So the Medes and the Persians actually did, at this point, come in. They actually did get into the city of Babylon, okay? Now, Babylon was a city set almost like a kingdom with a moat around it, okay? There was two rivers that kind of joined together and then flowed out from there. And so there was really only one entrance into the kingdom, which was heavily guarded because they were safe because of the two rivers flowing, that nobody could come in, sneak into this city and this kingdom from either side which the rivers flow, because they were fast. I mean, they were some strong rivers. Okay, so what the Medes and the Persians did is they dammed up one of the rivers well far up, okay? They dammed up one of the rivers, and it took a couple of weeks for the river to actually dry up, but it dried up enough to where they were actually able to get under the city, okay? Because there were these tracks going under the city, kind of like a septic or sewage system like you would think of today, of way the water in the rivers would flow into the city as well as back around out. So they were able to actually get in through underneath. And when they came underneath the city, they came up and out in this actual party that was going on. They came up and they came into this party, Okay? And you seeing half-drunk people lying around everywhere. Well, it's easy to kill them. It's easy to wipe those suckers out because they're all, half-toasted anyways. Alcohol and things like that. They're going to be drinking. This is why many times in the Bible it tells you to stay sober and stay vigilant and have a clean, conscious mind. And so that you aren't taken over by your enemies this easily. Because they were literally, it says it in Daniel chapter 5 verses 30. The same night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius of the Medes took the kingdom, being 62 years old, 62 years old, because it was that easy for those Medes and the Persians to come in and take it. I mean, they didn't even really come in and take it by force because these people were so out of it and God had already said, it's done. So all they had to do was just come in and say, oh, well, all these princes and the king and his wives and everybody else, they all right here. Just kill them all. And the funniest thing, y'all, is that the people of this city, Babylon, they didn't even realize they were taking over for an entire month. An entire month. Go look it up. Yes. It was about a month before they figured out that actually somebody else ruled over them. But that's because of how terrible of rulers they actually were. And the fact that, they partied and they drank all the time anyway. So a lot of the people probably walking around in the city didn't really see them that much anyway. So I digress though. But Belshazzar was weak, and Daniel did not care about those rewards that he was receiving because they were utterly meaningless to him. And it's kind of I love Ecclesiastes, and this just in verse 29 of chapter 5, when he was still given the third ruler of the kingdom. It's kind of like, oh, you're the third ruler of the kingdom. You're given third ruler of the kingdom all over again. Daniel was like, seriously? Like, I'm already third ruler of the kingdom? Whoop-de-doo, da-dandy. But it reminds me of Ecclesiastes 2:11. Then I looked on all my works that my hands had wrought, and on the travail that I had labored to do. And behold, all of this is vanity and vexation of the spirit, and there is no profit under the sun. This is Daniel he was kind of having that moment when he told him he didn't want the rewards. And then even when the rewards were still given to him, he's like, really, what's the point of having these rewards? They're just all meaningless because I've done all of this stuff for you, but I'm not in any better of a situation than I was in prior. Like, I'm still the third king. I'm still the third ruler of this kingdom. But we have to remember that certain things like this, it's one of those, you used to have to find the joy in the things. And our joy comes from Jesus. Okay? That is why Daniel had a little bit of this Ecclesiastes moment like Solomon. But we need to hold it in our hearts and have that joy and have that praise. Even in these times that we are going through now. I say, in my last video, I said we will rise. We will rise. This is the year 2022 where we will rise. Don't find yourself in that moment where you are just lacking all joy and things like that. Remember that Christ is our joy. And he will set you up. You will have a moment like Daniel did during this, where all you got to do is show up, say a few things, and then you get your reward. A lot of the times I hear it's called a supernatural wealth transfer, where we are being set up by God to claim it. We are taking hold of that strong man in this season. This year of 2022, y'all, for Christians, it will be your season that you will take hold of that strong man and you will get back your reward. You will be like Daniel. It'll be that easy where you just walk in, you show up, you show out, you get your reward, you're back on with your life. Because you know what? It says all of them were slain, but Daniel wasn't. Daniel was not slain at that moment. A lot of it, even though all of those princes and everyone else that was in that party was slain, he wasn't. He left. And he was taken care of. Now, next time we're going to be on Daniel chapter 6. There was a little bit more I had in this. Isaiah 55. And as well as Ezekiel 22. Those are great sections to read as well when looking at Daniel chapter 5. Just because you can see so much of the problems that were happening to the Jewish people around this time. Like Ezekiel actually happens during the same time of the ministry of Daniel. So a lot of that happened during this time frame. And this one, Ezekiel 22 really ties in a lot with those enchanters and the Chaldeans and the soothsayers and people like that, because chapter 22 of Ezekiel talks about false prophets, okay? And it says how her prophets in the midst, therefore, are like a roaring lion, ravening the prey. They have devoured souls, and they have taken the richest and precious things. They have made many widows in her midst. Her priests have broken my law and have defiled my holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and profane, neither discerned between the unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths. I am profound among them. I am profound among them. Her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravening the prey to shed blood and destroy the souls of their covetous liquor. And her prophets have dubbed them with untempted mortar, seeing vanities and divining lies unto them, saying, Thus saith the Lord God, when the Lord hath not spoken. The people of the land have violently oppressed by spoiling and robbing, and have vexed the poor and the needy. Yeah, they have oppressed the stranger against right. I'm going to tell you right now, this Ezekiel 22, this is what we are living in. We are living in this. You can look all over YouTube and find false prophets. How do you know they're false? Because when you watch one of them's video, and you watch another one of the videos, and you watch another one of the videos, and you watch a different one of the videos of 4 different people that say that they're all prophets, and you watch those videos and don't none of them agree, well, somebody's got to be false. So you need to use a little bit of discernment to tell. And also, right now, it says, her priests have broken my law and have defiled my holy things. They have put a difference between the holy and the profane. Okay, y'all, that's happening now. You find a preacher out there that tries to be politically correct, guess what? They ain't being biblically correct. If you're trying to be politically correct, you're not biblically correct. Okay? And you can't take this Bible and just change it into whatever you want it to mean. All right? You can't take this Bible and say it means one thing when it clearly states another. It not just does it state another, but it states another multiple times. And that's the world we are living in right now. We have false prophets, we have false preachers, we have false teachers, and we sure have princes. Well, I wouldn't say princes, I'd say rulers, governing bodies that are definitely like wolves, ravening the prey to shed blood, to destroy people. We've seen that the past 2 years. Governing bodies just trying to destroy the lives of their citizens. Okay? And let's not forget, There's so many people out there speaking lies, and there are so many people that have gone out violently against people, spoiling, robbing, looting, doing everything. I'm sorry, but you can't call it a peaceful protest if you burning something down. You burning down someone's livelihood. That is not a peaceful protest, and honestly, that is oppressing the stranger against their rights. That is happening every single day. And you know what? Right here, the next verse, it says, the Lord is speaking through the prophet Ezekiel, and he says, "And I have sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, and I should destroy it not. But I have found none." We do not need to let the Lord see that there is no one standing in the gap for this country or this world. It doesn't matter. Are you willing to stand in the gap? Are you willing to pray? Or are you just going to be like Belshazzar and you're just going to be weighed in the balances and found too light? I don't have time to read all of chapter 22 of Ezekiel or all of Isaiah 55, but I say those are great reads. You should read them, definitely. I will be coming out with lessons hopefully soon on both of those chapters as well, because they are just excellent chapters, and they really tell the times that we are living in today. You don't believe me? Pick up your Bible and actually read it. I'm trying to read through my whole Bible in 1 year. Some people might think of that as a very difficult task. I'm going to tell you right now, it is not. There are so many tools out there. All you got to do is find them. All you got to do is find them, hone in on them, and use those tools. Use them because they are out there for you. And do not be left out. Okay? These are strange, unusual times that we are living in, the end of times that we are living in, and we do not need to be on the day left out searching for oil when the bridegroom comes. We need to be prepared. You need to be like those that were prepared, that had their wicks right and had enough oil. Be prepared for these coming days ahead. And don't ever let anybody lie to you and tell you you don't need to read the Bible yourself and you don't need to understand these words and things like that. Don't rely on your preacher. Don't rely on anyone else. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's going to be you standing before that throne, not anyone else. So I hope that these words really blessed you. I hope that you learned something from Daniel chapter 5. I really enjoy the book of Daniel. I can't wait to finish it. And really just dive more into more of these prophecies and things like that. Maybe we can learn a little bit more from them. And if I get any kind of interpretations off or anything, don't hesitate to email me and just tell me, hey, you got this wrong. I really think it's this. Because you know what? We all got our own opinions. And sometimes the Spirit may talk to you in a different, it may talk to you and tell you this interpretation of it. And that's actually the correct interpretation. And I maybe didn't get the correct interpretation. So we will see in the future. And I hope you all have just a wonderful day. Have a blessed day. And I pray that this year 2022 goes so much better for you and just has an abundance of blessing. Until next time.